Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. As you know, in the previous videos of this playlist named Operating Systems, we will understand what is an operating system, how does it work, and why does that matter. Okay. In the previous video, we learned why a computer needs an operating system. Without an OS, different applications may compete for the CPU, memory, storage, and devices without proper coordination. The OS prevents the confusion by organizing and controlling access to hardware resources. But to understand this relationship, we must first clearly identify three important terms. What is the OS doing? What is hardware? And what is software? In this video, we will be looking into that. So, as we have established that operating system is the manager who manages almost everything from actual hardware resources to the applications. But how does it manage? Let's look at that. Let us understand this with an restaurant analogy. The oven, the kitchen, the hardware are the exact ones in the system. Like the CPU, the CPU is the processor, the RAM, the ROM, camera, webcam, printer, anything else. The recipe and the cooking instructions are that must be done, they represent the software as it is shown here. Hardware as the kitchen equipment. Let me change that. Yeah. So the kitchen equipment is the hardware and recipe and software instructions are the software. The OS is the restaurant manager. It orders, plans the orders, assigns the staff, manages the time, coordinates, and monitor and control. Customer is the user who will be using an OS which actually wants to work with the hardware with the help of software. This might seem complicated, but let me explain you in little detail. Hardware are the physical components in the system. As it is mentioned here, CPU, RAM, disk, keyboard, mouse, network card is for accessing the internet, printer, and monitor. Software is the programs plus instruction plus data. Software is the purpose why we need hardware. So let me rephrase that. Suppose we have a processor, but why do we need a processor for? To process something, right? Well, let's solve an equation. 1 plus 2. So anything which needs to process this has to go to a processor, do all the functionalities behind the scenes part, and then it will give the answer as 3, right? So there could be a hardware like a processor is lying here, but if there is no software to access it, or we don't know how to execute this or make use of it, it's of no use, right? So in one line we can say software gives purpose to hardware. Now, what are the applications or the users that are going to use the system? So as you can see, here are 6 different types of users that come to a device named as OS manager and ask for something such as open up a browser, print some paper, print some task on the paper, see something on the monitor, or do some computation or something like that. OS helps in doing all of them. It manages the processor, allocates the memory, uses file operations for handling all the device data and the files, for input-output process management. It gives access to those who should get the authority or the authentication for going on in the process and do the process, and the user interface for checking up the checking upon the whole system. So, what are application softwares? Some of the examples of application software are browser, such as Google Chrome, which is very quite popular, Safari for the people who use the iOS, text editor such as Notepad or anything else, media player, VLC or something like that, any game that you play, Candy Crush or Minecraft. Calculator is also a software. All the softwares demand or send service request to the operating system. Operating system is the middleman for the hardware and the software. OS then requests or commands the hardware for the specific request sent by the user through an application software. After asking for the control, the hardware, as we know that there's a driver here. Okay, so it's blue. Let me change the color. Don't be yellow. Yeah. So there's a driver here. So the hardware, with the help of driver, gives back the result of data, status, and interrupts. I will explain all of these terms in the subsequent videos. This lecture series would be approximately for 100 videos. So I would try to cover everything that a graduate should know in the subject named as operating system. Okay. So continuing on, the data, status, and the interrupts are sent back to the operating system, which sends back the result to the same application software. This is the whole process. So when a person opens up something, the CPU executes the instruction, RAM holds the active programs and data. If any changes or a data is being transferred into the actual memory, for example, if you store a file, download a file, so after to store that file into the database or the disk that you have, memory, so it is stored there. Maybe you want to see the file or make some changes in the file. It's a Word document or a PowerPoint presentation, so you will access or make the changes with the help of keyboard. After that, the operating system coordinates everything that you do, including the downloading, making changes, storing it, and finally the application performs that specific task. This sometimes happens by just one click. For a single click, you might see at least 6 instructions that is being happening, which you might not know of. There could be more. I'm just simplifying the details so that once you are familiar with the subject and the concept of computer, we can go down exactly what is happening. But these are the basic things that happens. So CPU is like the active processing station in which the food is being cooked. Maybe you want to cook some noodles, so the noodles in the hot pan is the CPU. RAM is the working counter in which all the chopping and all the processing, different, not the processing, but stuff is being stored so that the CPU can pick up from the RAM, because the CPU is just a cooking station, right? It's the pan on the flame. So RAM would be everything that the CPU needs as memory. Okay, and the SSD is the storage from where you get all the stuff, maybe the supermarket or wherever you want all the things to be stored from. Now let us understand what is happening inside. So application is stored on the disk. Let's say a text program edited. User double clicks on the application. I'm explaining this for the Windows perspective. If you want to personalize your device, then it's up to you, but generally the user double clicks on the application and it opens the application. OS loads it into the RAM. If any changes are to be made, then CPU executes the instruction. After that, application window appears. This is the actual process that is been taking place when you double click on an application. Similar thing happens when you press a button on the keyboard. If let's say you press a button H on the keyboard, it will generate an electrical impulse, electrical signal. The driver converts the signal into the format which the system can understand. OS receives the input event such as H is pressed, mouse event. These are stored in the types in the examples such as events. CPU executes the instruction. The active data in the RAM, maybe in the text file as explained earlier, there was a H missing. Sorry. Maybe there was H missing. So RAM updates that, and then the output is displayed on the monitor such as ELLO is added by an H since it was added. Okay, so after that, if you want to save that, user presses the save button, which is Control S in Windows. Application requests file service. So the request is sent to the OS to save this. OS checks the request and validates whether that particular user who is logged in the system is allowed to do that or not. After checking the permissions, if the user is allowed and the location in which the particular changes are to be made is correct, legitimate, then storage driver communicates. OS uses storage drivers to talk to the storage device. Storage is ROM, basically your actual memory, where even after you shut down the device, the storage, all your changes would be kept there. I am assuming that you are having an SSD, solid state drive. So OS writes the data on the SSD, then the file remains available forever until unless you delete it. This is what happens if you want to make some changes in that. So overall, operating system with the help of device driver works with the hardware. As you can see, a general request put the data into the output device. OS translates everything from what the user has done to how a particular hardware can understand. One request is transferred with the help of device driver. Drivers are there was a time where every device driver has to be installed for that particular OS. Currently it is very simplified since technology has caught up a lot, but so device specific commands are being transferred to the keyboard, printer, graphics card and network card, and then the hardware acts how a user wants. So let me debug some myths that are related to the OS. CPU and OS are the same. No, CPU is the hardware, OS is the software and executed by the CPU. RAM stores files permanently, which is incorrect. RAM is temporary. SSD or disk provides persistent storage. Persistent means permanent. Every software program is an OS. No, OS is a system software. Browser and editor are applications. Applications control hardware directly. This is incorrect. Applications normally request services from the operating system. So, without an operating system, we were very much confused. The different applications were confused. What should be done with the CPU, the RAM, the disk or the printer? But with the help of the OS, everything is managed and working well. Let us classify these things. Okay. Yeah, sorry. So, basic hardware components are physical components such as CPU, RAM, disk or keyboards. Softwares are browser, text editor, media player, calculator. and OS manages the applications. So that's it for this video. In the next video, I will explain the functions of an operating system. How everything works very smoothly, because being a manager, OS handles a lot of work. So what are the exact functions of the operating system and which are not? The functions that keep the system ready, running, without even the user understanding or knowing what is happening behind the scenes. Thank you for this video.